Yo, ho, ho, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are live and we are direct here on YouTube, man. Finally got everything situated. Technically, I'm sorry about last night's podcast, folks. It was meant to be streamed on YouTube. It will be uploaded to YouTube. It was a great show last night with Leroy Baker, who is a boxing coach out of Memphis, Tennessee. Tonight, folks, I have a very, very special guest coming to join me. I have Chris Daniel Dvamnn on Instagram, Dvamnn underscore Daniel, folks. You will see who he is. Such an amazing talent, mentally very strong, motivated to do great things in this sport. He will be competing at Octagon 52 in Newcastle, here in the UK, and he'll be competing against UK veteran, a very, very tough, gritty fighter in Aaron Abbey, and he'll be competing in Newcastle at Octagon 52 World Chris Daniel. Folks, I wanted to just touch because 2023 was a very, very interesting year, a great year for the UFC. Uh, and I want to touch on the UFC first before we kick the show off because the UFC really brought a lot of eyes into the sport. Highlight after highlight, moment after moment, knockout after knockout, submission after submission. For fight of the year candidates were really hard for me to decide when we were doing the MMA Reloaded end of year awards, which is why I did a lot of joint and I did a lot of tied winners. Because even for me, someone whose passion, whose dream is this sport, I couldn't decide for the life of me what was and who I was going to pick as the winner, as the recipients of these awards. Folks, if you would like, I wanted to touch on the MMA Reloaded shop, the merchandise, folks. It's been a long time since I've done and I've put anything on the MMA Reloaded Fighter store. On Instagram, folks, you can check out MMA Reloaded Fighter Store. You can click the link in the bio. I have it there. You can even search MMA Reloaded Fighter Store on Instagram, and it will be right there for you, folks. I have the best brands. I have customized products. I have the the best in boxing gloves, the best in boxing shorts, the best in casual wear, fight wear. MMA Reloaded's very own wear as well, man. I have everything you need if you're training, if you're interested, if you're an enthusiast, if you're just wanting to, if you're a collector of MMA or boxing, combat sports merch, then please do check out MMA Reloaded Fight Store, man. It is one of the realest. And you're live for episode 70 of the realest show on the net, man. We talk real, we never lie, cheat, and steal, man. It's your boy. Folks, we're going to do the particulars right now. And the particulars are basically me calling the fighter onto the show. And as I mentioned, it is Chris Dvamnn Daniel on the show, man. Combat Sports Jiu-Jitsu champion, amateur flyweight champion for Combat Nights Fighting Championships. And folks, I will put you on pause. Don't go anywhere because I'll be right back to talk to you guys right here live once I've invited Chris onto the show. So please bear with me and stay tuned. Folks, the particulars are done. We're awaiting the arrival of my guest tonight. Episode 70 of Real Talk, man. I've had over the past maybe 6 to 8 years that I've been doing YouTube for. And where it really started was me just talking to the fans, projecting my passion for this sport. And it's been an honor that I could make my name in combat sports, and I can make my name in MMA, and I can make MMA Reloaded have the respect that I have with the fighters that I have respect with. It's been an honor to talk to the stars, the champions, the warriors that I've had the pleasure of speaking to, guys who are in the UFC right now, guys who are in the PFL, guys who have been champions in UFC, in PFL, in Cage Fury Fighting Championships, Titan, anything. ONE FC, I've had all that pleasure. And it is a great pleasure for me to continue this now, then, forever. It is a pleasure. And I will be continuing this until I can't continue anymore, man. Folks, I wanted to also touch on 2023 as I was touching on before. We talked about the UFC and really the fact that it was hard for me to choose end of the year award winners for my UFC awards, for PFL even, man, for Bellator. Bellator is one of those interesting things for me because they bring on young talents who show up more than the main event guys or even the main card guys, man. And that was something for me to really look at, because when you're looking at a fight of the year, or when you're looking at a submission of the year, or a KO of the year, pages on social really go for the main event or the championship fights, because if you submit someone to win a championship or retain your title, that means more than just submitting someone in the early prelims. And I get that completely because of the meaning, of the definition that that submission has, or that knockout has, or that championship win has. I've had very interesting categories that I've done on this year's awards, which was Champion of the Year and Fighter of the Year, Breakout Star of the Year, Submission KO of the Year, Fight of the Year. And I wanted to really, capture those guys or those fighters who haven't been captured and deserve to be captured, man. And that's what my aim was for this my 2023 awards. So, folks, when we look now, and I know the UFC is looking for the most killer, the most anticipated card is UFC 300. UFC 300 is one of those events that, for me, the UFC is going to put on something ginormous, something that we are expecting to be star-studded from top to bottom. Already fights like Bo Nickal and Cody Brundage has already been announced. Aljamain Sterling and Calvin Kattar and Yuri Prohaska and Alexander Rakic have already been announced for that event. Rakic was injured and he couldn't fight Yuri Prohaska, and then he couldn't fight Jan Blachowicz. So for me, it was one of those things where that was a great fight to make. I know now what we're going to be looking forward to is what other fights are going to come up on that card. I know a lot of fans are going to be thinking Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya 3. Who's Leon Edwards going to fight? Is Leon Edwards going to fight on UFC 300? And how many title fights are we actually going to get on the card, man? Because there's a lot of potential matchups that you can make. And I'm sure a lot of champions who want to be a part of such a highlight event, such a granddaddy, such a spectacle event. I know UFC 200, we got Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt as a main event. I'm sure. I know that, we got Anderson Silva, Daniel Cormier, we got Amanda Nunes and Misha Tate. We got so many fights on that card that really captivated what a pay-per-view should be, and I'm sure a lot of fans have questions and have opinions about what UFC 300 should contain. I've seen Khamzat Chimaev's name been thrown as well. Khamzat Chimaev's name was thrown in a couple of fights. So Jared Cannonier was one, and Israel Adesanya, who's been calling them out, in another. One fight I would love to see comes out in, and this is coming from what I saw in the Gilbert Burns fight, where Gilbert gave him that fire that comes out has never really experienced before. Gilbert Burns gave Khamzat Chimaev that heat that Khamzat never really faced. And what Robert, and I think the perfect fight to continue to prove how good Khamzat really is Robert Whittaker. The reason why I say Robert Whittaker is I say it because Robert Whittaker is one of the best and one of the greatest fighters in the world today, and definitely one of the best middleweight champions we've had. I think when you look at Robert Whittaker now, he's being overlooked because he's coming off a loss here, coming off a win there. He's right in that middle of that middleweight championship picture. And I think the UFC is sort of looking at him as, we've given Whittaker all the opportunities. He's already won the belt. He's already had title shots. He's already been there and done that. So what do we give him next? And I think Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker would give Whittaker that shot, that big shot to return back to prominence, as we know Robert Whittaker can do. And for Khamzat Chimaev, it will give him a shot to make his and to stake his claim as a legit championship contender. You can't really say to Khamzat Chimaev, "Oh, nah, I'm not gonna, we're not gonna give you a big fight." Jared Cannonier was thrown into that mix. I think Jared Cannonier versus Robert Whittaker would be a fight that everyone would love. Jared Cannonier is one of the hardest hitters, one of the most well-rounded fighters, technically, and the way he's built now compared to the way he was built when he was fighting at heavyweight or light heavyweight. Yeah, Jared Cannonier is like Wesley Snipes, bro. The guy is literally a killer. And that killer gorilla is gonna be a problem, and he has already proven to be a problem for anyone that steps with him. And I think Khamzat Chimaev is gonna leave the cage with battle scars if he faces Jared Cannonier at UFC 300. I don't think it's something that you can really put your finger on. Fight making, and I think matchmaking for an event like UFC 300 is going to give the UFC President Dana White, Hunter Campbell, it's going to give all these guys, Sean Shelby, it's going to give all these guys a lot to think about. Because I'm sure there's a lot of fighters who want to fight on the card, but obviously, you can't put everybody on them. You have to put fighters who, one, haven't been on UFC 299 and UFC 298. You've got Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis coming up in Toronto. What's next for Leon Edwards? A lot of people are saying Bilal Muhammad. I really like Bilal Muhammad. I know fans, social media pages, everyone has their criticisms for Bilal. I know that. And I know that he's a fighter who's very slippery, and you can't really put your finger on the fact that is Bilal worthy of a championship shot? My opinion is yes. And I think Bilal Muhammad deserves every bit of a title shot against Leon. Yeah. When Leon Edwards returned to the octagon and fought Bilal Muhammad the first time, Leon was, ultimately piecing him up. And if it went to a decision before the eye poke, Leon Edwards would have won that fight. But there's no doubt that Bilal Muhammad is one of the best grinders in the UFC welterweight division. His wrestling, the way he fights, very tough, very hard driven, very hard hitting, grinding, very good wrestling. He can box as well with you in the pocket. Bilal Muhammad has a very good game on him, and I think that's where. Um, and if you look at Bilal Muhammad's resume right now, it's going to be one that the UFC is going to have to look at close before they consider anyone else for a welterweight championship shot. Um, on the other hand, if you look at your light heavyweight division, and if Alex Pereira does fight Israel Adesanya for the light heavyweight championship, one is Israel mentally ready and is he physically ready? Two, bro, is light heavyweight the path that Israel wants to go again after what happened against Jan Blachowicz? With how big Alex Pereira is at light heavyweight, and then compared to how much he walks around that normally. And then number three, that would be the trilogy. That would be the decider. That will be a fight where Israel Adesanya can prove one that he has returned with a vengeance and that he still belongs in that upper echelon of the sport. And he's skipped all those rungs of that ladder to get to that Alex Pereira 3 fight. I think where we look at now and where we're going to look at next, yeah, folks. And I'm just gonna pull it up right now to see what we got coming through. So, folks, next up is Magomed Ankalaev and Johnny Walker. I think Johnny Walker and Magomed Ankalaev, if you saw the first fight, it was a controversial, very controversial finish, and fans have been anticipating these two men going at it for a long time. And I think with this fight, when you come off that much anticipation and you finally get in the cage and start doing it, there's a lot of eyes, and a lot of eyes are going to be watching you and seeing what happens. And fans would have been disappointed as far with that fight, how it went the first time. Folks. Then you have, UFC 297, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where Sean Strickland will meet Dricus du Plessis for the middleweight championship. I think Sean Strickland is coming off probably the best 2023 of any fight. And I think when Sean Strickland really comes out and says, that he's gonna kick your ass, he's gonna kick your ass, and he's gonna kick your ass hard. And there's no one really close to Sean Strickland right now in terms of momentum. Dricus du Plessis is very close to that momentum. When you beat Robert Whittaker, and knowing how good Robert Whittaker is, knowing that he is a former middleweight champion, he's gonna be coming into that fight hungry. That guy is a lion. Dricus du Plessis is a lion. DDP, man. After what happened with Israel Adesanya, that back and forth, you best believe that boy is ready to capture belts, man. And with his record, with his style, very wrestling heavy, but the guy will stand toe to toe with whoever he needs to stand toe to toe with. I think DDP has earned the respect of the fans with his performances. I think the only thing now, if you're going into a championship fight, especially against a guy like Sean Strickland, DDP needs to be wary of cardio. He needs to be wary of conditioning. You're not going 3 rounds, you're going 5. And Sean Strickland can go 10, 15 rounds if he needs to, man. That guy's cardio is amazing. He thrives off of the adrenaline. He thrives off of championship fights. He thrives off of the energy that he gets in that cage. Folks, we're gonna see what is going on right now with Dvamnn, Chris Daniel. He has seen it. So, folks, we are close to being ready to get going to the show. So, it's the UFC has a lot to look forward to, and a lot of memorable memories being created and being put into this new era, this new map, coming into 2024. Folks, I think another promotion that's impressed me and continues to impress me is the PFL. I think what PFL have done is amazing. The only thing I've heard rumors about their financial situation and financial struggles. I think the merger with Bellator is going to help them a lot. I think put um, you can't really put PFL into that category of being a one trick pony just yet. I think when PFL do what PFL do is amazing. I think the league setup, the tournament setup, the gauntlet setup is amazing. You actually find out and see with that tournament setup who your best fighter and who the best fighters are, and who gets that $1 million check with the championship belt. PFL now for me is it's like a project. It's an experiment in MMA. It's something where you have homegrown fighters, you have ex-UFC fighters coming, you have legends, battle-tested veterans, you have guys who have been champions in other organizations and come into this gauntlet for gold, as I call it, for the whole year, to go one-on-one, man. And PFL for me is one of those things that I've always been interested in watching. I've always been interested in seeing how it's evolving, how it's going to evolve in the future. And for me, it's one of those things that I love to watch. One of those things that I love to see, and I'm not gonna, really stop putting my faith in it. I'm gonna keep my faith at PFL and seeing what really comes out of it in the end, and how PFL evolves and changes if necessary going forward. Man, Chris Daniel is here and he is waiting, folks. We are ready and we are waiting. So we are live and direct.
Hey, what's going on?
Chris, how's it going, brother?
Pretty good, pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm very well, man. Thank you very much. Happy New Year and a Merry Christmas to you, bro.
Likewise.
Uh, First of all, man, I just want to just introduce you, man, to the fans. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, it is episode 70 of MMA Reloaded Bro Talk. We are live with Chris, Daniel. Bro, thank you very much for taking the time out to join me, man, on here live. I know you're preparing for Octagon 52.
Yes.
Know that Newcastle here in the UK. Bro, I just want to kick off by asking: is this your first fight in the UK, or have you fought here before?
No, it's definitely my first fight in the UK.
How
First fight.
how you feeling coming into your first trip here to the kingdom, man?
It's amazing to be honest. 10 years ago, it's funny how when I first walked into an MMA gym, I walked into Wagner Rocha's martial arts in Plantation,
Yeah,
and the assistant head coach was Jim Allers. So he was in the UFC, but before the UFC, he was in Cage Warriors,
yeah,
and he almost fought what's his name? That he's big, Conor McGregor. How did I forget that? He almost fought Conor McGregor not once but twice. But both of them kept pulling out. One got called to UFC, and they didn't end up fighting. But anyways, I was more happy to know that, hey, if I take fighting seriously, I could travel. You know, I could see the world. And
Yeah,
I told him one day, I was like, hey, you traveled around the world and fought. I'm gonna do the same thing, and I
yeah.
can't wait. I always wanted to fight for Cage Wars. It never happened, but 10 years later, I'm doing the same thing with a different promotion, just as big. So I'm happy for that.
Oh man, you know, it's always a big opportunity for a fighter when you can go around and you can travel the world like this, doing what you love, you know. And I think
Yes.
different opportunities present different things when you're, especially in our sport, you know, man. And I just want to say, how's it been? How's camp been for you, man? And how's training and how's preparation going for this fight?
Camp, it's nothing changed. Besides the mindset, instead of thinking about a regular fight like I would have done in the US, I'm treating this as a championship fight in the UFC.
Yeah.
So I don't see any way he's gonna beat me. I'm putting the work outside and in the gym. I'm never going to sleep thinking, hey, I should have done this. I should have done. I'm doing it without having to think about it.
And you know, I just want to say that, of course, you're going to be fighting away from home,
Yes.
for the first time, and you know, away from your backyard. How does that put or does that add any additional pressure to you, bro? Coming into this fight.
Not at all. Not at all. I live in the States. I fought in the States about how many times? About 20, 25 times, amateur and pro.
Yeah,
And to be honest, I barely fought in my hometown. I was always the underdog. I was always fighting someone else in their hometown.
yeah,
And I go in there, I always get booed, I always get cursed out. But at the end of the day, they be so loud when I get to the cage. But as soon as the fight's over, all you hear is crickets, silence.
and that's it,
So
man.
I'm
That's
used
it,
to it.
bro.
It's not gonna be any different.
Bro, I love that, man, because you know what? That's what your aim is, right, man? You're coming in as the out of town favorite, you know, and your goal is obviously to silence the haters, man, and of course,
Yes.
put another notch on your belt. Bro, I just want to obviously come through and say, you know, for those fans who don't know who Chris Daniel is, how did it start for you in combat sports, and of course now going into combat jiu-jitsu? How did you really get into martial arts and combat sports, bro?
So it wasn't just one event that made me turn into going into a gym and wanting to do MMA. It was like little pieces of my life kept adding up. Like, yo, I have to do this. It just keeps bringing me towards MMA. And the first thing was, I remember fighting this dude in the streets right after high school. He disrespected my girlfriend at the time, who's
Mm.
the mother of my kids now. But he said some bad words, and they were going back and forth. And then she called me like, "Hey, this person from school, can you beat him up?" I was like, "Why would I beat him up? He just said bad words. There's no reason for me to beat him up. Like, let it be."
Yeah.
A week after, she's calling me. She's like, "Hey, come on, beat him up, beat him up." And she kept peer pressuring me to do it. And I'm like, "Nah, I'm okay." So one day I was like, "All right, I'm gonna shut you up. I'm just gonna call him. Let's meet up and let's fight." So we ended up fighting
Mm.
in his neighborhood. I called my friends like, "Hey, come back me up. I just want you to support me, guys, just to make sure like I don't get jumped." And everyone was like, "No, it might be a setup. Don't go, don't go." And out of like the 10 people I asked that were my best friends, only one went. Everyone was like, "Nah, I'm not going. I don't know if I'm gonna die or not. So I'd rather be safe than sorry."
Oh,
So it was just me, my girlfriend at the time, and then my one friend that decided to come with me. I ended up going to his neighborhood, and he had like 15, 20 people with him. And I just had my girlfriend at the time and my one friend. So we ended up fighting, and he was just kicking me. And I remember, because I play soccer. So you guys call it football. In
yeah.
America, we call
Yeah.
it soccer. But so I'm used to kicking. I also did Taekwondo. So I kicked
Yeah.
back. So when I kicked him, he caught the kick and took me down. And he went to the mount and he started ground and pounding me.
Oh,
And I remember just covering up, and he was just hitting me in my ear, my head, and all that. And I was like, "Yo, this is pretty cool." Like I wasn't even mad that I got beat up. I was just happy and ecstatic to the fact, like, "Yo, you could do this to somebody that easily." So I was like, "Yo, I gotta join the gym." And then a year later, I still never joined the gym, but there was a TV show called MTV Cage, It
Yeah.
was on MTV
Yeah, man.
about these kids in Louisiana,
Yeah.
and they wanted to go to the UFC. So I watched it and I was like, yo, I have to do this. This is pretty cool. So
Bro.
even after watching that show, I still never went into a gym. So a year and a half later, after watching MTV Cage, I was like, yo, I have to go in. I don't care if I don't have the time. I don't care if I have the money, vice versa. I'm going to make it happen. So I finally went to the gym. And what happened was I went to a Muay Thai gym. And at the time when I started, I was like 23, 24. And
Okay.
I remember going against a kid who was 15, 16. And he would just beating me up in jiu-jitsu, beating me up in striking Muay Thai. And I was like, yo, this is it. This is my goal. I have to do this.
Mm.
So that's how it started from there. And then how it progressed into, yo, I definitely have to do this was we all have sad stories in our life. We either could let it make us depressed or we could push through. And when I was 25, 26, unfortunately, my 5-year-old passed away. My mom was watching my kid while I was sleeping. I'm sorry, while I was working. And she ended up going to sleep and he went to the backyard and unfortunately, he drowned.
I'm so sorry.
So before it was a regular fight night, I remember Showtime Pets was on there. And when we were watching it, he was tired of watching it. He wanted to watch the little cartoon movies. And I was like, yo, let's watch one more fight. He's like, okay, okay. And then I remember joking around with him and I was saying, hey, you're going to see me on TV one day. And he was like, for real, Dad? And that promise that I made him before he passed away, I made sure that he was going to see me on TV when he was alive.
I can't hear you, Chris. I can't hear you, bro. No. Oh, damn. Uh, all right. Let me call you back.